Namaste, I'm Sophie French. Thank you for joining us this evening for Yoga Insights. These are our weekly talks and demonstrations on various spiritual practices. So this evening, we're going to be talking to Valerie Hwang. Valerie is an Ayurvedic health counselor and a yoga nidra teacher based in Long Beach, California. And this evening, Valerie is going to talk to us about the qualities of food from an Ayurvedic perspective. She will talk about the basic building blocks of Ayurveda and the Rasa panchakas. And then she will explain how we can use this knowledge to make healthier choices in everyday life. Valerie, would you like to join us?
Namaste, everyone. How are you doing? Thank you, Sophia, for bringing me here.
Namaste, Valerie. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so happy to see you again because before this, we also met you during our Global Festival of Yoga. So we're very excited to have you back. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So I'm going to hand over the talk to you now, and best of luck. I'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay, so let's get started right away. I'm going to share my screen. So I hope everyone tuning in here is doing well. I won't be able to monitor the chat while I'm doing this talk, but if there are any questions or issues, please do enter them in as we do this. So just a disclaimer I always put is that the workshop is for educational purposes only, and it's not a substitute for healthcare evaluation by a qualified professional. And we are going to be talking about understanding the qualities of food today. Okay, so like I said, the purpose of Ayurveda, we're going to talk about the basic building blocks, elements, doshas, and gunas. I'll explain all of that in a bit. And also how to relate to food. So the 6 tastes and the Rasa panchakas and how we understand food more from like a healing perspective, how we can see what the food has, what effects the food has on our body, and then how to use this knowledge to make healthier choices in everyday life. Okay, so a little bit about me. My name is Valerie, and I'm an Ayurvedic health counselor and yoga nidra teacher from Long Beach. As you can notice, I'm talking in my therapeutic voice. I'm trying not to wake up the neighbors because it's 5:30 in the morning. So please excuse me if I sound a little bit soft today. But yeah, so the current focus for my Ayurvedic practice is clinical management and supportive care of disease, mental health, and everyday vitality. So trying to get people to live their best lives without the obstacles of disease. And then in terms of my training, I've gone to the California College of Ayurveda. I'm finishing up my education for clinical Ayurveda at Southern California University of Health Sciences. And I've also done the Bhagavat Life Ayurvedic Nutrition and Culinary Training. Okay, so let's go into what is Ayurveda. I'm sure everyone has some exposure, but let's look at a little bit of the details of what Ayurveda means. So Ayu equals life and Veda equals knowledge. So Ayu is all of life, the conjunction of our physical body, our senses, our mind, and our soul. So knowing about the entirety of life and what it entails is the science of Ayurveda. Okay. As you know, it's yoga's sister science, and both are rooted in an ancient Vedic philosophy, and they do go very well hand in hand. So if you practice yoga, Ayurveda can be a great supportive tool for you to use in your everyday life to strengthen your practice. And one of the official definitions given by the Bhava Prakash, a 16th century Ayurvedic text, is that Ayurveda is the science which describes life and its suitable and unsuitable foods, which we'll talk about, activities, etc., as well as diseases, their causes, symptoms, cures, and treatments. It's also good to note that Ayurveda views humans as a microcosm of a macrocosm. So any of the forces that govern the universe also govern what's going on inside of us. And also Ayurveda is an individualized medicine, meaning that even if you might have one condition that is the same as another person because of your individual doshas, your situation in life, etc., the treatment for that disease may be different because you are different. Okay. So the goal of Ayurveda ultimately is swastha, which is health. But literally, when we translate the word swastha from Sanskrit, it is to be established in the self. And that means to be established in the self in all aspects, not just in the body, but in the mind, right? So it is meaning that we do have that balance and the harmonious interactions of the doshas within the body and the mind. And not only that, we are preserving the health of the healthy and curing the diseases of the unhealthy. And then you can think about, okay, well, why is it that we want to be healthy in the first place beyond just not suffering, right? What does life give us access to when we're not suffering? And so you may have already heard of the four objectives of life, right? Dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. When we are healthy, it opens up the opportunity for us to better focus on these higher goals in life. Okay. So now I'm going to go into the building blocks of Ayurveda, because in order for us to understand how food is going to affect us, we need to understand what makes up the food. And not only the food, but also the rest of the universe. So we can look at these 5 elements here. And from that, we can look at every single force, every single material that exists. So the 5 elements are ether, air, fire, water, and earth. I've put the Sanskrit terms on the bottom for your reference as well. I teach to mostly Americans, so they don't get a lot of Sanskrit exposure, right? So in terms of ether or akash, it's the idea of empty space. It's that which is the most subtle and the least substantial. However, it is vast, right? Space is vast, and it holds every single other element in itself, and it connects everything. So when we think about ether in the body, then we think about like the spaces in our body, especially in our bones. We have a lot of that space. When we feel spacey in our mind, that's also a manifestation of ether. Then we have air or vayu. So vayu is that which is moving, the idea of motion. And so anything that moves in the universe, anything that moves in our body is governed by vayu or air. So when we think of our digestive system moving the food down, or if we think about the circulation of our blood, or the movement of our nerve impulses, all of that is governed by vayu or air. Then we have the element of fire, which is the idea of transformation, heat, or metabolism. And so anything with that fire, that transformation, is responsible by fire. So thinking about like how we digest our food in our stomach, or how we even convert certain nutrients into these smaller usable elements in our body. Literally fire that burns, all of that is fire or agni. Then we have the element of water, which is the idea of cohesion, that which brings things and sticks things together, and that's apas. So water is not just talking about H2O, like that water, but we're talking about anything that has that cohesion. And so when we think about water in the body, of course, we're thinking about our water, which, you know, the body is made up of mostly water, but we're also talking about the oiliness of the body. We're talking about viscosity. Okay. And then we have earth element or prithvi. So earth is the idea of solidity and matter. So anything that has substance is going to be considered earth element. Anything that's solid, anything that we can touch, that's tactile, like this has some earth element to it. Okay, so now that we have gone over the 5 elements, let's take a look at the 10 pairs of opposing qualities that Ayurveda uses the most. There are many different qualities or gunas, but these are the ones that we use because we use them in a therapeutic sense. And so you'll notice that there are 20 qualities total with 10 pairs that are opposing each other. So when the body has too much of one of these qualities, we're going to look at the opposite quality and take more of that in so that we can balance it out. So the 10 pairs of opposing qualities are heavy and light, dull and sharp, cold and hot, dry and moist, smooth and rough, solid and liquid, soft and hard, stable and mobile, subtle and gross, clear and slimy. So we all know these words. So let's take a look at how we can understand some of them from a food perspective, right? So let's take a look at the quality of heavy. So a heavy food might be something like a fried donut or bread, very heavy on the body, right? And then whereas a light food would be something like maybe popcorn or puffed rice, right? You can imagine it's very light. Then when we have dull and sharp, something like alcohol is very sharp. It penetrates through the body and it could travel very quickly to the brain, right? While something like heavy cream or cream cheese is dull, right? And it's going to go a little bit slower through the body. Then we have cold and hot. So think about a food that you eat in the summer that keeps you cool. Something like cucumbers, right? Is going to be a cold food, whereas something that's hot is going to be something like chili peppers. And let's go over dry and moist. So a dry food might be something like kale or like a leafy green like that, or crackers are very dry as well. And then a moist food, you can think of like an avocado or a mango. Those are very moist, have a lot of water in them, right? And so think about the rest of the pairs of qualities like this as well. You could probably find lots of examples in each one. And then, of course, each food has a list of various qualities. They don't just have one quality. Okay, so then looking and going back into the elements, of course, the elements also have qualities, right? So they have, they're going to have 10 qualities each, but we're going to just go over the main ones, the more prominent ones for each one. So ether is going to be cold, light, dry, and unstable because it doesn't actually have any substance. And so here we have stable and mobile, but rather than it being mobile, we just think of it as unstable. So of course, these are very unique. Sometimes they have these like special qualities to them. Air are going to have the qualities of cold, light, dry, and mobile, with mobile being that key quality, whereas other elements do not have that mobile quality. Fire, the key element, of course, is going to be that heat, right? Hot quality. Along with that, it's also dry, light, and unstable. And then water is going to be cold, moist, with moisture being that key quality, heavy and stable. And then also earth is going to be the most stable, but along with that, it is going to be heavy, cold, and dry. So now let's go into the doshas, since the doshas are the main part of understanding Ayurveda a lot of the time. So we want to know the doshas very well. So in terms of the 3 doshas, we have vata, pitta, and kapha. And I'm sure you've all heard these terms before, but let's go over it just in case. Right. So each dosha is composed of 2 elements, and the doshas are what govern the functions in the body. But not only that, doshas inherently mean imbalance. So when you have excess dosha, that is something that we want to bring down, right? And so doshas are very, very important when it comes to what goes on within us. So Vata dosha, because it's air and ether, is going to be light, dry, mobile, and cold. So get used to hearing those qualities, right? Because air and ether are those, a combination of air and ether is what makes up of Vata. So because of that, Vata governs all of the movements in the body, including thought. And because of this, Vata is extremely important in the body. And in fact, Vata is responsible for creating the most diseases in the body as well. And then we have Pitta dosha. So Pitta is going to be that which cooks or digests in the body. And so it's composed of fire and water, which you wouldn't think go together, but think of it as like a container of moisture that keeps the fire in, right? When we have food in our stomach, that stomach lining protects our stomach from being burned because we have a lot of acid, a lot of heat in the stomach while we're trying to digest. It's what we need for us to make that transformation of food into nutrients. So the qualities of fire are going to be hot, oily because of the water element, mobile, sharp, and light. And so the functions of Pitta include digestion, metabolism, and transformation. But not only that, Pitta is responsible for sight as well, for our logic and our drive. And then we have Kapha dosha. So Kapha dosha is composed of the elements of earth and water, with elements of earth and water being the most stable and heavy. So of course, Kapha is going to be heavy, moist, solid, and stable. So if you have a lot of kapha in your body, that means that you have the more tendency to also keep on to that weight, keep on to that stability. And what kapha brings to the body is growth, stability, and resilience, along with lubrication because of the water element. Now, all of these doshas, of course, have their imbalanced aspects to them too. If you have too much of Vata dosha, right, you're going to have probably too much dryness in the body. You might tend yourself towards constipation, anxiety because of the movement in the mind. Whereas Pitta dosha, if you have too much of that fire, you might find yourself having like acid reflux all the time or get angry easily, right, in the mind. Whereas Kapha dosha, if you have too much of that stability of that earth and water and that moisture, you might find yourself feeling very sluggish and heavy, maybe gaining some weight, but also feeling very like unmotivated sometimes because of that heaviness. So let's take a look a little bit into the manifestations of the doshas when it comes to imbalance, right? Because the imbalance is what we want to bring down. All right. So this you can find anywhere on the internet when you take a dosha quiz, or if you go see a Vaidya properly, they always think about these states of imbalance due to the doshas. So you can find this easily, but I'm just going to go over it quickly so that we have a concept of how the doshas manifest in the body, and then we can go along and talk about food. So in terms of the basic signs of Vata dosha, because it's air and ether and has that mobile, dry quality, right? Unstable, then it brings that quality into the digestion. So appetite could be unpredictable. Sometimes you're really hungry and sometimes not at all because the air is blowing around that digestive fire, the Agni. And sometimes you might have a tendency towards skipping days. That's constipation, right? Drying out the digestive system so that things aren't really moving in the colon. Then not having a lot of sweat because of that dryness, and the tendency to feel cold, especially in your fingers and your toes. Having irregular meal times is a sign that Vata is going on in the body. Snacking a lot because you don't know when you're going to be hungry or you're hungry irregularly. Getting anxious, especially when you've missed a meal. Getting lightheaded because of the ether, feel very spacey. Dry skin, distraction, then sometimes having a lot of gas. And then also this tendency sometimes to alternate between like constipation and loose stools. And then also the sign of getting trouble getting to sleep is also a sign of vata dosha because there's too much of that lightness and there's nothing to hold, like stabilize you when you're trying to sleep. Okay. So if you think about, if you have a lot of these symptoms, that means there's probably a lot of vata going on in the body right now. Okay. Then we have the basic signs of pitta dosha. So pitta dosha, remember, is going to be fire and a little bit of water, sharp, okay, mobile, heating. So somebody who has a lot of pitta in the body is going to have a very strong metabolism. Their appetite is going to be really good because they can just metabolize that food really quickly. So they will have more bowel movements, and sometimes they will have several bowel movements because of that. And sometimes those bowel movements can tend towards loose, because one of the ways that we get rid of excess pitta dosha is trying to eliminate it through the stool. Right? So if you have a lot of diarrhea, that could be a sign that you have too much pitta. If you get angry when you're waiting too long to eat, that's a sign of that pitta. Feeling warm overall, their skin gets kind of red or flushed, oily, tending towards that like reddish acne. Feeling a burning in your stomach, those are all signs of pitta. Sweating a lot. Another quality of pitta is that it can be smelly. You might have a little bit of body odor. That is a sign of pitta dosha as well. And then also another type of insomnia is that pitta type of insomnia where you feel too hot at night, or if you're up late at night working or thinking about the next day and what you're going to do, that is also a sign of excess pitta dosha. Then last but not least, we have the signs of kapha dosha in the body. And when we talk about this, we're talking about imbalance, right? Of earth and water, those being the heaviest elements, the most stable, and also with the water moist, right? Think about all of that going on in the body. So if you have a low appetite, this is a sign of kapha. And why low? The reason why is because of that. The water and the earth, they are cold. They both are cold, and they're both very dense. So think about like having like a huge piece of cake and thinking about that going through your digestive system. Generally, when people have those heavy foods, it takes a long time for those to digest. And so like the appetite tends to be lower because our body just cannot handle that heaviness. So with the dosha, with kapha dosha, it's the same way. If you sweat a lot and you have a lot of that bodily moisture, if you retain a lot of moisture, that's a sign of kapha dosha. You feel heavy and sleepy after eating and you feel lethargic and unmotivated. Those are also signs of kapha dosha. Then your digestion will tend to be regular when you have this, when you have kapha in your body. Once a day, the tendency to gain weight and with it being hard to lose, having trouble getting out of bed. So kapha is the dosha that can sleep really soundly and sometimes a little bit too much. And then kapha is the dosha where if you've fasted and you actually feel better, more energetic after doing a fast because it lightens the body up. And then if you have a lot of mucus, again, that's the moisture in the body, that's a sign of excess kapha, right? Okay, so now that we have this basic understanding, let's talk about food. Okay, so this is so important because food is our kind of like our first line of treatment. A lot of time it's what we eat every day. We need food to survive, but not only to survive, we can use food to thrive. And if we understand food from an Ayurvedic perspective, you can even see the different healing qualities of food as well. So I'm going to talk today about something called the Rasa panchakas. And so every single food or every single substance in the universe has a unique set of qualities that we've already talked about, right? And so it has their unique set of effects. When we understand these qualities, we understand how and why foods can contribute to our health or take away from our health. So I will go over the rasas, gunas, virya, vipaka, prabhav. Those are the five rasa panchakas. So pancha means five, of course. So how these five different attributes can attribute to our understanding of food. So in Ayurveda, the building blocks of all of this is the 6 tastes. And so we conceptualize nutritional value through the 6 tastes, and each taste has its unique elemental composition instead of qualities. And so a healthy meal also has 6 tastes in the appropriate proportions. You want all 6 of these tastes, sweet, sour, salty, astringent, pungent, and bitter. You want all of these in a meal, but not in the all in the same proportion, right? And so that is going to be unique to your needs. As we go along in this talk, think about which tastes you need the most in your diet. All right. So I categorize the taste into 2 bigger categories. One is the nourishing tastes, and one is the more purifying tastes. Now, you don't have to categorize it like this, but it's easier to conceptualize and remember. So sweet, sour, and salty. These 3 tastes help build bodily tissues. They put more of a nourishing quality to the in the food, so they have a more heaviness to them, and they also promote moisture. So sweet, sour, and salty all have water element in them. Now, when we have too much of these 3 tastes, it can lead to buildup of toxins or excess weight and swelling. However, in the correct amount, they really do keep us alive and are energetic. Okay, so sweet taste is going to be earth and water. So if you think about earth and water, that's kapha, right? So it's going to be directly increasing kapha, but reducing to vata and pitta. And so sweet taste is cool, unctuous, satiating, building, and brings stability and comfort. With some of the examples of these types of foods on the side, grapes, wheat, rice, milk, dates, and honey and oats. So sweet taste, as you can manage, it's not just sugar. We're not talking about eating like cake and ice cream. No, we're talking about these healthy substances, foods that build the body. And so because they're cool and they're unctuous, they really help to nourish the body, right? So any kind of like oils too, ghee, are going to be in sweet taste. Then we have the sour taste. So sour is going to be fiery, earthy, and has a little bit of water as well. And so the sour taste, because of the heat and because of the heaviness, it's going to increase pitta and kapha or aggravate it, but it's going to reduce vata. So someone with a lot of vata in their body is going to benefit from this. And so sour, when you think of sour, right, when you have a lemon or if you have some curd or yogurt, we eat those foods to promote digestion. It helps us to metabolize and it increases our appetite. So it's not too building on the body, but it does have that heavy quality when you have too much. Then we have a salty taste. So salty taste is primarily water and fire, a lot more moisturizing, moisture building. If you think about when you have a lot of salt in your body, you tend to retain moisture more, right? So salt has a very special function of enhancing flavors and appetite. And when you think about it, our ability to taste actually depends on the moisturization of our tongue. If you don't have like a wet tongue, it's actually very difficult to taste things. Salt also helps to soften bodily tissues, and some examples of salty food would be like soy sauce, seaweed, sea salt, or olives, right? Those are all very salty. Then we have the 3 purifying tastes. These are all very light. They help to cleanse the body. So when you want to, if you feel like you have a lot of weight or excess moisture, these 3 tastes are the ones that are going to help you remove that excess. If you have too much of these tastes, it can be a very difficult thing, challenging for the body, and it can lead to emaciation, fatigue, or constipation, right? So just because it's light doesn't mean it's healthy. So the 3 of these tastes, spicy or pungent, bitter, and astringent. Okay, spicy is going to be composed of air and fire. If you think about that, very, very, very hot and drying. So because of that, it helps to burn fat in the body. It decreases the mucus, and it also stimulates digestion. So why do we use spices? A lot of the time it's to help food digest, help with circulation, right? If you think about like the chili peppers or black pepper, ginger, all of these things, when you eat them, they're heating and they help to circulate fluids in the body. Then we have the bitter taste. Okay, so bitter is going to be ether and air. And what are ether and air? Vata dosha, right? It's a direct increase of vata dosha if you have just bitter taste. But it also reduces pitta and kapha because of that cold and reducing quality to it. So bitter taste is really important when you have inflammation in the body. It helps to lighten the body, right? And it kind of scrapes away at some of the heavier toxins. So bitter is very important to also keep in your diet. If you think of bitter melon, turmeric, fenugreek seeds, dandelion greens, those are all bitter tastes. Then we have astringent. So astringent is going to be very drying because it's earth and air. So we want to use this when we have like excess moisture. And so it's drying and cooling. It also helps to heal wounds. If you think about like, so turmeric has that astringent quality to it as well. If you have a wound, if you put turmeric over it, it will help to astringe some of the fluids and help heal that wound, right? Stops diarrhea and it helps to cleanse the skin. So some of the examples of astringent food could be like lentils or chickpeas, pomegranate skin. Sage is one, or spinach. When you eat spinach, you kind of have that puckering feeling in your mouth, right? So that's astringency. All right. So then we have what we call the guna. So we've actually already talked about this before, right? The 10 opposing qualities that now goes into the Rasa panchakas. When we think of food, we definitely want to think about the qualities of the food. And so with that, we can think about like a lemon, or we can think about cinnamon. So when we think about the qualities of food, we get to the very like nitty-gritty details of what the food can do for us. So we know lemons are sour. That's the major taste of the food, right? So then let's quality within that taste. So lemons are moist. They bring moisture to the body. When you think about like having a lemon on your tongue, right? Your mouth waters. It's clear. It's sharp, flowing and liquid. When we eat that lemon, we know that we're kind of getting our fluids moving. So lemons are really important in that sense. And not only that, it has a very interesting quality to it too, where lemons, if you take a lemon, it tastes sour, but when we know that now that also is alkalizing to the body once it enters the body. Then we have something like milk. So think about milk as opposed to a lemon, right? There's more of a dullness to it, a cloudiness, a softness to milk. It's going to be a little bit more nourishing because it's more sweet than sour. And so it's going to be cold and heavy, right? Cinnamon, think about cinnamon, and it's those qualities of cinnamon, right? When we eat cinnamon, we increase our circulation, but we also heat the body a little bit. So there's hot, light, sharp, and mobile. And then chili peppers, we have something that's more drying, right? Something that's hot, sharp, dry, and mobile. So think of your favorite food. Like think about the qualities that it has and how that might affect the body. Okay. So the third of the Rasa Panchakas is something we call Vidya. So Vidya is going to describe whether a food has a warming effect or cooling effect. It is the potency of the food. So all foods are going to be in this range. They're going to either be cooling on the body or warming on the body. Some foods can be neutral as well. But it's important because when we have this tendency to if we run hot, right, if we're adding the heat to our body, it's going to aggravate pitta dosha. So we want to know if it's going to be cooling or heating. So Vidya, in terms of the foods on the screen, what do you think butter is going to be, right? What do you think honey is going to be, or tofu, or radishes? So as we know, butter is going to be a sweet substance, right? And sweet substances tend to be cooling, so it's a cooling vidya. Whereas honey actually is going to be a heating substance in the body inherently. It's a very scraping and kapha reducing substance, and so it has a hot vidya. Then we think about tofu, right? When we eat tofu, it's quite like cooling and drying a little bit even. So tofu has a cooling effect or a cold vidya. And then we think about radishes, especially like a raw radish. If you bite into it, you feel like all of a sudden that pungency, that spiciness, right? That is going to be hot for the body. So it's going to bring heat to the body. Ultimately, it's a heating vidya. Okay. Then we have something called the post-digestive effect, and that we call vipaka. So vipaka is what happens with the food, or what effect the food has on the body after it's been metabolized. And so these are described in terms of sweet, pungent, and sometimes sour, but most foods are going to be either sweet in vipaka or pungent. So what does that mean? We're not talking about flavors or tastes anymore at this point. It's after it's digested, right? So what happens to the food after it's been metabolized? Does it build the body, or does it reduce the mass of the body? So sweet vipaka means that the food generally brings the nourishment and tissue growth to the body. Whereas pungent, right, being the most reducing of those tastes, means that it's going to lighten the body. It's going to take away from the mass. Sour vipaka is going to generally help improve digestive function and has a more tonifying action. It tightens and the body a little bit. So I know that it sounds very similar to the tastes, but it does have a slightly different function to it. So foods that have a sweet vipaka are going to be things like milk, breads, mangoes, and coconuts. And as you noticed, those are also foods that are also having the sweet taste, right? So it's pretty logical in that sense. Now, something like pungent vipaka doesn't mean that it's a spicy food to begin with. It can be a spicy food, but also it's just any food that is reducing and purifying. So we already talked about the radishes being pungent, but it's also a pungent vipaka helps to reduce the mass. But something that it is spicy or pungent, like the not spicy or pungent, like cabbage, even when we eat it, it has a pungent vipaka because it helps to reduce and purify the body. Okay, it's more reducing than it is building. Other foods that have pungent vipaka can be like kale or parsley, right? Sour vipaka are going to be things like buttermilk, lemon, sour pineapple. Those all help to increase the metabolism and help with the digestive fire agni. Okay, so last but not least, foods have something we call prabhava. It's the special action of food. So any substance that it has, we can call it kind of like a healing effect. And so prabhava is often a unique aspect of a substance or food that can't readily be explained by its qualities, right? So you can think of some foods that kind of have this like special healing quality that doesn't necessarily go along with the rest of its taste or its qualities. So something like cranberry is well known to help with urinary tract infections, right? Or ginger. Ginger has a special quality to reduce nausea. If you're out on the sea and you take a ginger tablet, like the seasickness goes away. Or something like cayenne pepper, which is hot, and you would think like, oh, well, it helps to increase circulation. It has a special quality to stop bleeding when used topically. It's very interesting. So those types of things where foods have these special healing qualities that aren't necessarily always in line with the rest of their regular qualities. Okay, so to summarize what we've talked about, because I've thrown a lot of information at you and I know it's a lot, we had the Rasa panchakas, right? The 5 ways that we can look at food, the qualities of food or any substance therapeutically. So we have the 6 tastes or the rasas. We have the gunas or the qualities of the food. We have the virya or the potency of the food, which is cooling or heating. We have the vipaka of the food, which is going to be the post-digestive effect, is going to be building to the body, reducing to the body, or is it going to have like that, the sour quality where it helps with digestion. And then we have prabhav, which is the special action or healing qualities of the food. Now, how do we make the choices every day, knowing this knowledge? Well, it certainly does take a little bit more of research to know specifically every single food that you eat, what effect they're going to have in the body. But knowing this, knowing that you can use taste to determine what effect a food is going to have on the body, knowing that you can pay attention to how it feels in the body, right? Knowing if it's going to be cooling or heating, knowing whether it's going to help build your body tissues or if it's going to help you reduce body tissues, is going to help you determine what's going to be better for you. And if you look back at those doshas and which doshas are dominant in your body, then you know that with vata being light and dry, you're probably going to want to bring down and stabilize your body, right? You're going to want to build the body because it needs more nourishment, it needs more moisture. Whereas if you have more heat in the body, if you have that excess pitta, you're probably going to want to cool the body down. At the same time, you have that high metabolism, you may want to have foods that are more sweet and nourishing, right? Or if you have excess kapha, if you have too much heaviness in the body and you just can't get up in the morning and you're gaining a lot of weight, then maybe you're going to want to add more of those pungent foods that are going to reduce the tissues. Maybe you're going to want to have more of the bitter foods to scrape away some of that excess in the body, get rid of some of those toxins, right? So knowing that, you can just kind of start to look at, oh, okay, well, maybe I have too many like heavy fried foods, or maybe I'm having too many salads, because salads can actually be very aggravating to the body if you have a lot of vata. So knowing that, like, you can see which aspects of your diet maybe you're having too much or not having enough. Be aware of the changes of your digestion, right? Where do you think you might be out of balance? If you have a lot of like loose stools, maybe you have a little too much heat in the body, right? Then you're going to want to pick the foods with the qualities that match your needs. So also think about like how cooking and combining different foods are going to affect the overall, because we can't look at just one food. We're not just eating one ingredient at a time. We're usually having several ingredients in one. So like a stir fry of veggies has different veggies in it. Not only that, you're adding a heat to it by cooking it. So when we add heat, right, we're changing a little bit of the qualities too. Think about a raw onion, how pungent that is. But think about if you add heat and saute the onion, it becomes a sweet food, right? So think about how food also changes the way that it changes the qualities of the food. Also, you're going to always want to eat freshly prepared food made from local ingredients that are in season, right? We're so lucky to have exposure to all of these different foods from all over the world, but having things that are locally grown, that are nutritionally rich, can really help your health, even if it might not be always exactly in line with the qualities that you need. But like having freshly picked vegetables, having milk from a local dairy, very important to getting the most nutrient dense food that you can. And lastly, in order for us to control our health, we really need to choose what we eat and have those like conscious decisions in how we process our food, right? So cooking our food is really important too. Okay, so I am going to stop my presentation here. I think I've done exactly 45 minutes. So I'll give you some people some chances to ask some questions. So let me stop my share here.
Hi, Valerie.
Hello.
Thank you so much. That was so much information, and it was so much useful information. So it really helps how you categorized everything. And I love the way you made the presentation flow. So that really helped. I'm hoping even the audience understand how we can make better choices, how food affects our body, our mind. And, especially like you said, this is the sister science of yoga. So for yoga practitioners, diet plays such an important role. And
Yes.
and great. That was so wonderful. Thank you. So we're just going to be open for questions now, if anyone has questions. And I think someone left a comment in the chat. This is Aditi MG. She wants to know, does Ayurveda talk about how prana and energy interacts with the various aspects you covered in this presentation, and how that might affect energy levels or cause diseases, such as something that I can't pronounce?
Myalgic
Yeah.
encephalomyelitis. Okay, yes. So Ayurveda does talk about prana and energy, and that it's a very important aspect of Ayurveda. And we can talk about prana actually in many different ways. And so I don't want to go into a very deep talk about it, but remember, like prana is what is the life force. So in our body, we take in prana um, through our breathing, right? And so that goes a little bit more into the yogic side as well, because we talk about pranayama and whatnot. But also, prana is provided to us by food as well. The more fresh the food is, the more prana that it contains. And so we all, that's why I was saying we want to have very fresh foods. Now, how prana gets carried in the body, aside from the pranavaha srotas, which is the prana carrying channel, we also carry it in our blood. So blood, or rakta dhatu, and the rakta vahasrotas is the blood carrying channel. So in that channel, we carry the prana as well. So taking care of the blood is very important to our health in terms of prana and energy. And then how energy levels might affect or might how prana might affect energy levels and cause diseases. Now that is a little bit more complicated because there are many different causes of diseases, right? And so it's not just attributing to prana, which is definitely going to be part of it, but we also have those different doshas as well. And when we see something as myalgic encephalomyelitis, itis is inflammation. When we think about inflammation, that means there's excess heat in the body, and that usually is attributed to excess pitta dosha. But that's simplifying things because we're looking at different layers also of tissues in the body. So something with that has to do with the nervous tissue, that's quite deep into the tissues of the body as well. So maybe next time I will do a talk on pathology. That will be a pretty advanced talk though.
Thank you so much. Aditi ji, I hope that answers your question. Our next question is from Jayashri ji. She wants to know your take on adults drinking milk every day.
So Ayurveda does list foods that can be taken every day. And because Ayurveda is a science that, lucky for all of you in India, is from India. So the foods that they listed for everyday consumption were things that are available in India, with milk being one of the main ones. So milk can actually be taken every day for adults. Of course, it has to be taken with keeping in mind your state of balance, because milk is a sweet food, right? But milk, when it is freshly taken from the cow, right? When it is from a source that is ethically sourced, right? We want cows that are treated well, that have been fed well with grass and whatnot. Then yes, it can be a very healthy food that can be taken every day. In the United States, we have a big problem where a lot of the milk that we get are from cows that have been mistreated, that have been fed with hormones or with like not so nutritious feed. So in the States, for us, unfortunately, I don't think milk can be taken every day for that purpose. But for those who have access to fresh milk from cows that are treated well, it is a food that you can take every day.
Thank you so much. So Jayashree ji, I hope you got your answer. We have another question from Vinita ji. She'd like to know if you could talk about combinations of doshas in terms of diet. For example, kapha vata.
Mm-hmm. That one is a very difficult one, kapha vata, because they tend to be opposite in qualities, right? There are such things as like having a kapha vata balancing diet. The way that I was taught is to because of the nature of the digestion, when you have kapha and vata, they're both cold. So the digestion is going to be more on the side of a slow digestion. At the same time, because it's got that unstable quality, kind of goes up and down, you can't take foods that are going to be too heavy, but you still need that stabilizing quality. So we always recommend for vata kapha, you do take foods that are more nourishing, but take them in much smaller quantities, right? And I'll really listen to your body, and perhaps space out the food so that like you have enough time to digest it. So smaller meals that are more nourishing. Yeah.
Thank you. We have another question from Suvir Saranji, who'd like to know, what do you think, or what does Ayurveda think of milk substitutes?
Mm-hmm. So every substance is unique, right? So milk substitutes, when we're talking about maybe like plant-based milk, right? Almond milk, oat milk. Yes, they're all going to be sweet, but they are going to be sweet in very different ways. So the qualities are different. Milk from a cow is thought of as like a rasayana. It's something that is rejuvenating. And so that's a very unique quality to actual milk. But we don't get that from oat milk, right? Because oats are a different substance. It comes from a grain. And so it's not, and it doesn't have the same protein compounds either. Oats don't have that much of that protein. Whereas something like almond milk, almonds are also a rejuvenative substance, but nuts tend to be more on the heating side. And so when we look in the details, there is no one-to-one substitute for milk, even though it might taste similar. When you look into the gunas, when you look into the vidya and the vipak, it's going to be slightly different.
Thank you so much. I think that's about it for questions so far. Thank you so much. If anyone thinks of questions, you all can forward the questions to us. We can always forward it to Valerie if you think of questions after this chat. Valerie, if any of our readers or our audience would like to get in touch with you, can you share your details, please? Your contact.
Yes. Okay, let me, I kept it on a screen, so I'll share my screen again just one more time. Okay, so, all right, so if you want to get in touch with me, my email is intrepidayurveda@gmail.com. I have a website, which is of the same name, intrepidayurveda.com. So you can get in touch with me there. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'm always available. As I said, I'm an Ayurvedic health counselor. I work mostly with diet and lifestyle, and I am working towards also the clinical side of it. If you have very advanced questions, I would also be happy to refer you to an Ayurvedic doctor, so that you can get those more advanced questions answered as well. Okay.
Thank you so much. And for everyone who joined us, and if any of you would like to share this video with people you know, or even come back to it because there's so much information, like I know I'm going to be watching this again. This session was recorded and it will be available on Indica Yoga's YouTube channel, as well as on our website, indicayoga.com. Thank you, everyone. We're getting a lot of messages, everyone saying thank you to you, Valerie, for this lovely session. And we'll see you next week. Namaste, everyone. Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you. Thank you, Sophia Ji, for having me again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Enjoy the rest of your day.